Hello, Lars Daniel. Welcome, and to all our viewers, welcome to another episode of Seafood Explained. This is Kontali's webinar series on the drivers affecting the seafood industry. I'm still Ragnar Rønning, and together with me, as I already said, I have Lars Daniel Garshol, our senior analyst on salmonids. And today's topics is been long in the making, and finally we are here. It's land-based salmon farming with a bit dodgy title, with the hockey stick dreams or hairy back realities. And the reason for that title is we have constantly over time been very kind of taken back and been kind of not negative but conservative on our harvest estimates for large-scale land-based farming, and we have constantly been wrong. And we want to look into this how we ended up with these optimistic forecasts, and we're going to look into why we have made the assumptions and maybe we're a bit off, and what we can expect going forward. And Lars Daniel, you've been reluctant to talk about land-based salmon farming for, I don't know, 3 years I've worked here now. But now you suddenly said yes, and then we had to do it. So, and why?
Well, it's not by any means a reluctance to talk about it, but more the timing and the point of saying yes to hold a webinar like this on land-based farming. And the graph, as you mentioned here, is of course what has been the reality. It's more the giving insights into how and assumptions behind the graph, our point of view as analysts, where we are now for the land-based salmon industry, where it's becoming more and more relevant in terms of the number of plants for large-scale operation.
Yeah.
That will go into operation, both from last year and entering 2024, 2025, 2026. So it represents also a crucial phase.
The kind of a tipping point, more or less.
A tipping point, but where we have always viewed land-based as a much needed capacity growth in terms of the lack of growth, growth potential and outlook for the salmon farming industry as a whole. And what we are focusing primarily and talking about here now is, of course, Atlantic salmon.
Yeah, and you wanted to kind of take us back, and you wanted to start with kind of the full salmon industry, and there we actually have a good old-fashioned hockey stick, right? But there's something happening at the top here. We have kind of leveling out.
Yeah. So this is a graph also representing the total history of the salmon farming industry, which is really, in short context, a major success in terms of consumer and trends and marketing of a product, which is a major success. And it started with of course, the pioneers back in 1950s, 1960s, but really didn't take off until both capacity and vaccines.
Mid-90s, right?
Mid-90s.
But did you see the revenue in mid-90s? We did not, right?
No. So this is, of course, the major and super profits we're seeing now, and what has taken place in the last few years is, of course, sum and a function of different things. But the key message, which we would like to highlight also as an intro, is what we've written and had talked about earlier in webinars, is the stagnation of Atlantic salmon in terms of coastal net pen as a result of fish health, welfare issues.
Public opinion, right? It's been us. They don't like us anymore. Okay, it's not right, but it's right. Again, right? It's driven by fish health, but governmentals, lawmakers, those who give away licenses see that the fish is kind of not treated as good as it should, or
also the main barrier is of course capacity, the capacity to grow, and is then of course driven by politics and policy, right? With the example here of the resource rent tax, which limits land investments for the conventional industry, if you would like to call it that, where land-based has been and represents a much needed supplement to this growth, but also a shift towards the potential future, away from the major original producing regions, with a potential increase in domestic production of Atlantic salmon towards the airborne salmon markets.
Yeah, but not only Atlantic salmon, right? It's other species there.
Yeah, and if you look at the total salmon farming industry as a whole, the strong pricing, which really is a result of the market situation, strong demand, and an industry not being able to deliver the product enough, it spurs the interest for also other salmonid species such as trout and char and koho and chinook in other regions and places and niche production, if you would. So, but what we really, as a going into the land-based, and if you have the next graph here.
I just want to make a point for it, because you talked about that. It's a fantastic story about the marketing and the right product at the right time and a fantastic price, but it's also a fantastic product, a high-end product, big salmon, superior salmon. And you want to talk about size matters, you tell me, and I always like that. Size matters, sure, but
well, we're talking about harvest size.
Yeah, harvest size. Okay, so it's salmon we're talking about. But
and as a starting point, also for the discussion, is the matching the supply and demand side, where you also see the highest growth, right, with the recovery of the food service segment post-COVID, and also the global trend with sushi, sashimi. Growing even more, representing the
big fish plus 4 or 5 kilos, right?
The major pillar in the salmon market, which has experienced growth and expect to go forward as well. And here, in the context also for land-based farming, understanding what has taken place and where is the momentum moving, both in terms of utilizing, it's not only loss or mortality, if you would, or extraordinary event that impacts, but it's matching the supply availability in terms of a size distribution, in terms of product category, which is linked also to the financial metrics and the steady state proof of concept in large scale, which here, the graph here shows the competition compared to the conventional side, where industrial sizes 3 to 4 represents the highest share of up to 5 kilo, and then of course the large-sized salmon market, which you have in Asia, North America, Middle East, representing also by the airborne high price segment.
So this is where kind of you see that the lack in performance from land-based is not delivering on the sizes, but I guess also the numbers of fish, of course.
It's an early phase, and it has been for land-based, and we have, of course, up through time always had respect for this, and partly why, and as I mentioned as the introduction here, the reason why we accepted also highlighting this is the momentum and change and expected in the number of plants here going into production for 2024, 2025, and 26. And here the crucial and part of the test in securing the utilization of the capacity is not only the number of fish, but having a product that you end up with.
Where the market actually want, right?
The market side is representing what you end up with as a product, because it is of course impacting the end result of how you end up. If you have a lot of 1 to 2 kilo sizes having to push this at lower prices, it costs more. You're not able to utilize your capacity. It's the recipe for success is size and stable conditions, where the sea-based open net pen has a competitive advantage in being the technology that has been built up over 50, 60 years.
Yeah, and they have a product that the consumers want, and also in volumes to speak of, right?
Yeah, and land-based has been developed over many years, and with smolt plants from poultry to ROS plants. But we're then talking about here in Norway 80,000 tons in capacity, but its size is on average 200 grams, right? And you have up to 1 kilo and up to 2 to 3 kilo is good. But it's having the large scale test pace from 3 kilo in large scale operation is one of the major success criteria, also meeting the market side. So it's relevant for us to highlight this for people that haven't and are not joined this webinar, that are not that familiar with the salmon industry, as a context to understand where and how it works.
Yeah, and when you talk about that, you talk about that the size is important, the right product more or less, but if you kind of move forward, you have had a lot of kind of interesting cases, and plants are being built. There are companies there with success, not success. That's not up to us to say here, but moderate success, let's say that. But you have mapped them, right? And you kind of seen that some reasons why you have made your hair back is like the lack of utilizations of those plants, right? And that's also kind of comes into why our kind of forecasts are being up, and you're trying to explain it to me with this slide, and I think you need to explain it again.
Yeah, what we've done here and what this graph really shows, and what I said earlier, is that the major shift or the change to understand the state of play is the number of plants being then able to produce more than 2,000 tons for a single plant for a single year, right? That has capacity up towards 10 and even higher, which is under construction, being planned, and expansion and phases, right? But if you look at the actual output for a year, there has only been to date one plant that has produced more than 2,000 tons.
One plant over 2,000 tons to date, and that was back in 2022, right?
2022, and this is where you're seeing the shift. So understanding the harvest output and scenario can also be linked and closer looked at in terms of understanding the probability or likelihood of this growth now taking place into more and higher degree of certainty, if you would,
yeah,
in the next 2 to 3 years. Yeah, and important stepping stone from being representing only marginal fractional share of the total supply, and in not any case being able to adequately supply the deficit, really, which is there in terms of the global Atlantic salmon industry.
Yeah,
but it's understanding that the number of players here being able or in position to generate this growth is taking as many more than it has previously.
They kind of finally arriving. Now they're here. Like in 2024, first year, you have 2 players who can deliver up to 5,000 tons.
Yeah, it's more a question of who is next
Yeah.
on this top 10 list.
Yeah, you have made a top 10. It is scattered at best, right? You have one on top and you have left it open for the rest to fill in and possibly take the record as well.
Yeah, so we expect this list to be full.
Yeah.
If we do a second webinar in a couple of years.
So, and the record is up for grabs this year, I think.
Yes, definitely, and it's going to take place, and we envision also that this will accelerate and increase the focus for land-based. It's of course one of the topics that are perhaps more interesting is the technology difference here between RAS and flow-through. We won't go into this, but we are mapping and following all the 25 companies, both from large scale below 5,000 tons, and having a view on what is there's a potential here in outcome.
Yeah.
And we still have our conservative view for the land-based, but we are becoming more and more optimistic, if you would, in terms of being able to generate this growth.
Yeah.
And
you're touching...
that's what we wanted also to highlight this graph. So the different tables here represent the harvest volume range or category, if you will,
for each plant
by number of plants.
Yeah.
Right. Where the increase in production is more plants producing more, 2,000 or above, and about 5,000. So there.
So you basically here you're actually being for 24 and 25 optimistic on behalf of the plants and companies and also the technology, right? Do you think they're on the tipping point to actually make things happen here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And another way to view it, if you would, to give some insights of how we have approached this is spending most of our time in terms of the player mapping, which takes a lot of time, which we have spent over the years, say, building knowledge over time is the best way to approach this from an analytical perspective. And here you see that the function of utilization also per capacity or stated capacity, and also mapping the long-term plans and ambitions is another. We won't include all the data or setup here, but we that is also a metric and a range that is very relevant to look at, to understand and give the harvest forecast content.
Yeah.
And understanding the assumptions that are being placed and put behind a harvest forecast.
Yeah.
How do you read and how do you interpret a figure, for example, is then of course linked to what assumptions have been put behind it, and understanding that.
I think a little bit drive us a bit further, because you've been mapping the kind of the players and how the capacity been, and if you look a bit back again, like 2018, when the large big boom in funding and financing and stock listing of companies, and all drivers were kind of and the stars were aligned, and it was high prices and capital available, and the market demands were there. Do you still see those drivers today? Are they still valid for the land-based farms, or have they changed in somehow?
Yeah, they are in much and a great extent the same place. And as you mentioned here, the lack of growth is perhaps the driver for continued focus on land-based, where technology takes time to develop. You have the same major drivers, like price, high freight cost, lack of growth, really.
There's no growth, so there's a potential to take that position. It's deliver more volumes.
And a strong demand side. What is the more, say, question marks that and if you take the 2018, where we had a higher assumption in terms of the output on capacity utilization, is now also the same phase you are in, but where the total capacity in terms of being able to produce this has gone up.
Yeah.
And continue beyond this ramping up, how do you more long-term view, and how do we look at this? We look at the different barriers. Like construction takes time, application, permit processes, what is the current state of, say, biology, genetics, harvest weight loss, yield, what type of, so all our plants in the same databases mapped between the type of technology, but also the people and knowledge being behind all the companies here are very essential also for a barrier.
Yeah.
In more longer term view on generating this growth.
Yeah, but and you also still have the same kind of barriers been there the whole time. You can prove this technology. They show us that it works, that you can produce a 4 or 5 kilo salmon and in volumes and deliver to market. And I think that's why you have a question mark at the access to venture capital as well. If you can make the last one there, the technical biological proof of concept green, then the cash is available, I would guess.
Yeah, and what we're really talking about there is then, of course, the large scale and the utilization, right? Where following a few years, it's been slightly disappointing. I don't think there's any news towards that, but we're really talking about large scale operations. Where showing that is then the major, say, stepping stone or threshold, if you will, in terms of further expansion and having access to capital and funding. So of course, when you build and put billions into something comes out, but it's not necessarily our criteria that this will succeed. No, it's more the further and more you represent this in stages where you are, the easier access to also capital.
Yeah.
So it's only a more rational thought and idea, but the phase here in terms of capacity expansion has barriers.
I guess so, yeah. And show me the money or show me the fish, I'd say that's probably the one thing lacking now. But if you comes up with the fish and you have the volumes, and of a land-based, I always had they go to that there. We're going to be closer to the markets, and we're going to be to the high-paying markets where the demand side is very strong and very strong. Does that still hold up? Is it you have this? I see a lot of bubbles there. It's a bubble bath for me, but you probably can't explain it once again. This is the third time. I'm a slow learner, but I get it this time. Okay.
Yeah.
So, but you think this is one of the main drivers for the land-based? Okay, this is the Asian and North American markets, right?
I've been trying to teach you this graph a couple of times.
Yeah.
And on the webinar, so the bubbles are really and represent the size of a market. Where on the bottom axis you have the GDP per capita for a country, and then the consumption of salmon. So there is a relation to that, and it's a way of defining what markets are underdeveloped, if you would. What are emerging markets compared to developed markets, say France, Germany, Spain. Norway is not here because then the rest of them would be lower. But the context for the land-based that is highlighted here, so the bubble of the US, Middle East, China, represent airborne threshold salmon markets, where there is a
threshold big superior salmon for the high-end markets, right?
Yeah. So if you take the global trade flow for salmon and put it into a map, there's a mismatch between what is, say, the production regions in the world compared to where is consumption growing in Asia, Middle East, and North America, particularly.
Yeah.
Where 650,000 tons in North America compared to Canadian, US production of 140, right? Where you now have land-based planned ambitions close and above 800,000 tons, right? It's a shift in terms of where potentially does in-market production come into play, and can also be a disruptor for the market dynamics if the same product is then available in terms of size, categories, product quality, high-end, right? Where you see, and the reference to the bubbles here is where is the greatest potential in terms of market growth.
For land-based.
Not only for land-based, but also
salmon in general.
Salmonids in general. So it's total farm salmonids in tons compared to the purchasing power. And then there are other parameters that explain, and for example, here in the US, the difference between the coasts compared to the Midwest, for example. So there are seafood explaining differences between market and the reason why they are size difference. But it's the context of where away from the traditional producing regions is then natural to take place in the, say, next phase of the development.
Yeah, so what you're basically saying here, there is big markets with deep pockets craving a lot of salmonids, where there's a kind of lack of coverage in production, lack of supply, basically. And that's where you see the highest potential for the land-based farming, right? It's, as you said, North America, Asia, Middle East, right? Low production, high consumption.
Yeah, the opportunity for salmon there is there for all to take, really. And it's really the ability to produce and grow.
Yeah.
For those who are able to utilize that, the signal from the market side is that yes, we want more.
Fish.
But the challenge for the industry is then producing more. That's the state of play.
Yeah. Well, I think we're starting to come into an end, and we're almost out of time. Goes so fast every time. But I'm trying. You're trying here to explain some seafood to me, and I think I'm going to try and sum it up, and then you can correct me if I'm right or wrong. Okay. So land-based farming, large scale, right now, the tipping point. We are in a couple of years ahead of us now, where we have kind of the proof of concept. Large scale production with large fish, not only in size but also in numbers. So can they achieve producing a fish plus 4 kilos in big numbers? You have several players coming into play where they have the capacity, and if they manage to utilize that capacity, they can produce quite big harvest volumes. So you will actually see the 20, 40, 60,000 tons coming into play in 2 to 3 years. The drivers that were in the first boom, high prices, high freight costs, big supply or demand, they are still there. It's a bit hard probably getting the cash right now, but if you can prove that this concept is working, then the venture capital will come back. And also, as you showed us, the market, it is here. So, and also in the end of it, your kind of forecast for 24 and 25 is not another addition to the hairy back. It's closer than ever to being a reality, right?
Yeah. And that's the intro on the graph that we show there. It's giving that content.
Yeah.
And we are for 2025 also becoming more optimistic in terms of what is the potential output there, still being below 50,000 tons.
Still you're having a 100% increase from 24 to 25, right? From 20 to 40,000 tons. So, yeah.
So I hope it gave you some context, and we are, of course, and likely continue to be too conservative optimists for land-based, but in increasing degree more and more optimistic in seeing growth generated from this sector.
Fantastic. And on that note, I think we're going to round off. But if you want to follow Lars Daniel's harvest estimate for land-based, you can log into our Edge portal, request a free trial if you're not a customer. And with that, I will thank all our followers for listening in. And if you have questions after this, call Lars Daniel, not me. And thank you very much, and have a good day. Bye-bye.